Hello, everyone. Lorenzo here, and I am also here again with Iam Saums. Delighted to have him back. We're going to do this as, I would say, a cross exposure, a cross promotional video from our new now, and perhaps I'll get to share it in our In Love Unlimited series as well. As our topic today is loving through challenging times. Iam, hello.
Hello, Lorenzo. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I mean, maybe we can take a moment to discuss what love is, in your opinion. What loving is, what even that means before we get into the deeper topic of how to love during challenging times. What would you
Ever
say?
since I was in high school and probably even before that, I think love was best defined as an experience for me of being related on a very deep level with the people that I um, experience life with at any given time. So for me, love shows up as relativity.
Okay. So relative to what?
Relative to the people that I'm connected to. But I guess, I'm glad you mentioned that because I guess you could probably associate that with just about anything, creativity, imagination, people, nature, even to some degree, reality, so to speak. I mean, even though reality gets a bad rap for the most part because of the state of ours as it is, there are parts of the reality in which we live that is beautiful in and of itself.
For sure. I mean, in reality, it's got to show you where you're sick too, I would think. I mean, if you want to look at, I would say, love and what loving could be, loving through challenging times is, what are those challenges and what are they allowing you to face so that you can become more loving?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, for me, it beyond the relativity. Love is also about very intimately, not necessarily in a sexual way, but like very intimately being able to connect with another person, like on an energetic level, not just through the words, intellectually, or even the physical, instinctual, sexual nature of relatedness on an intimate level, but like emotionally, being able to be vulnerable and express and share what's there for me personally, and then the intuitive element of that, which is the ability of being able to sense and feel what the other person is going through as you're sharing, and having that listening and observation of them so that it becomes something that is a multidimensional experience between two people that ultimately begins and ends with the soul on the soul level.
So how would you define a multidimensional experience?
One that is, I would, it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that because a few years ago, I was talking with a friend of mine, and I was sharing with her what I felt was the ideal experience of a relationship between two people.
Okay.
And normally in our society, where it starts is usually like an instinctual attraction or even maybe an intellectual exchange in conversation, right? So it starts like in a lower level, so to speak, of existence. And then ultimately, if you're fortunate and vulnerable enough, you can elevate to a higher form of intelligence where there's a certain level of conscious communication. And then ultimately, you can move up to the emotional level and then be able to feel comfortable and safe and secure enough within yourself and with the other person to share your deepest feelings, not only for them, but for other people. And then ultimately, if you're even more fortunate, it becomes more of an intuitive experience where both people are vulnerable with each other and they're able to share on that level as well. And then ultimately, that ends up on the soul level. But what I was explaining to her is that, um, for instance, for this person, our relatedness started on a soul level, even before we knew who we were, each other was. And then it moved into an emotional level. And in that emotional level, there was a relatedness, on a whole different level, that didn't really include instinctual desire or intellectual exchange. And then ultimately it became intellectual, and then more of an instinctual experience, but never a physical one with this specific person. So when I say multidimensional, I mean on all of those levels of our being. Living as human beings in this reality, we are souls first before we come to this world, obviously. And then as we emerge into this world as a baby, child, adolescent, adult, elder, whatever, we're able to develop ourselves and evolve ourselves on all these different levels. Unfortunately, I don't know if most people do that. I mean, a lot of people get caught in the instinctual level and the intellectual level. I'm starting to go into the fourth way school kind of mode of experience, but there's not a lot of emotional exchange or interaction on a very deep and profound level. You know, there's many degrees of emotions that we go through. There's the instinctual emotions, and I won't get too deep into it because it can become very confusing. But there's the instinctual emotional level where it's more a lower base level of interaction on an emotional level. Then there's like more of an intellectual emotional level where there's more of an awareness and a consciousness of how you're relating emotionally with another person. And then there's another level beyond that, which is more emotional, it's at the heart of our emotionality. And then there's a spiritual component of that too. But unfortunately, I don't know if a lot of people are able to go beyond the instinctual level of emotionality with people because they lack the strength to be vulnerable and expressive with their feelings. And in our society, we've demonized feelings in many ways because of the interpretation of vulnerability as equated to weakness. And so, and it just, I mean, emotionality on a higher level or intuitive things or even spiritual things, they don't exist in our reality because there's no relativity, there's no container for that within society. I mean, society is just not committed enough as a collective whole to having these elements of our awareness and our being be as much a part of our experience in society as the instinctual and intellectual are.
Do you think that container is something that needs to be created in this modern time, so to speak?
It has to be created by each and every person.
Right. Well,
and my last article, The Art of Equilibrium, starts to get into that. It talks about how we need to find that equilibrium within ourselves of that multidimensional nature of our being, whether it's on a soul level, whether it's on a intuitive level, whether it's on an emotional level, instinctual level, or an intellectual level. And being able to have that is one thing. To be able to experience it is one thing. However, especially right now with the way society is, we have to find that equilibrium. We have to find the alignment with all those different dimensions of our being to be able to connect with our soul in the universe. And without that alignment, I mean, people call it chakras, centers, whatever, however it's interpreted, it's all about finding the alignment, the equilibrium of our being so that creates a resonance on all those different levels that allows us to connect with the soul and the universal experience.
So why would someone want to do that?
Because that's deep down inside, I feel that each and every one of us is yearning for that fulfillment and the empowerment and the enrichment and the transformation of that experience. I mean, there's so many things that we interpret as fulfillment or attainment that are really not. I mean, they're like inauthentic fulfillments. Whether it's like sitting down to watch a TV show that makes you laugh and you feel good and all that stuff, but then that fades, or even having a conversation like we're having right now. I mean, there's a certain potency to that based upon the subject matter or the words that we choose to express and share with each other about the things that mean a lot to us. But to be able to sustain that over a period of time, that's our responsibility. As much as it's our responsibility to create that alignment and equilibrium within, so that we can continue to generate that awareness and that experience of fulfillment.
I would agree. I would agree. I mean, do you think that could be a way that life could be looked at? The rebirth, as they say, coming back to yourself, finding where you came from, the efforts towards how you can love during challenging times. We'll get back to the topic, let's say, of this conversation, to kind of find the focus for that, and what your day-to-day life may require outside of the craziness going on in the so-called real world.
I'm glad that you chose to talk about love in this in this paradigm, specifically related to society, because quite frankly, I think that is pivotal in where we're moving to as a society, but more so as spiritual beings having a human experience at this time in the history of humanity. The ability of being able to understand and acknowledge and embrace that love, I know it's corny and cliche and all that stuff, but people say love is the answer, or all you need is love, or whatever iteration that you can choose to express the importance of love. And love can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To me, even love is multidimensional. The experience of love is multidimensional. It's something that puts us into an experience that most of us lose when we're adolescents. It puts us into the presentness of being, where nothing else matters except for that moment. So for me, love is also like being in the moment so much that nothing else matters. But, and if you can share that with another person, like I'm sure you can with your significant other, and in many cases I've experienced that with my wife, even though we live in reality and it doesn't last forever, but being able to generate that with each other so that we can maintain that level of relatedness. I mean, that's the answer. I mean, a lot of the problems and issues that now face the world is all because of a breakdown in communication. It's a breakdown in relatedness. It's a breakdown in understanding. And it's right now, I mean, more so than ever, and this from the last 2 years, there is such a breakdown in acceptance of other people for who they are and who they aren't, that it's just stunning to me. And it just has me really observe how much a lack of acceptance can destroy so many things in our lives and in our experience of society and reality.
Well, maybe it's I guess a reflection of lack of acceptance in self, right? Part of I guess love, like you said, it goes back to being vulnerable, being humble, and being able to freely admit where you're not so nice, not so loving. We'll leave it at that, and where you need to heal yourself so that you can grow from those areas. And quite literally, the world masking up and hiding and locking away and not being allowed to meet and not being able to travel and all these things. To me, that seems like a direct reflection of that hiding from yourself, hiding from what you need to do, hiding from source even.
Yeah, and it's indicative of how society naturally exists for most of us, especially in an instinctual and intellectual level, because there's such a separation and isolationism that has always occurred in reality for whatever reason. I mean, people can interpret it as, oh, well, they're trying to keep people separated so they don't come together and overthrow the government or whatever, or they're trying to keep people separated because they don't want them all to come together and shift the reality and the world as we know it and transform it in the end. But that's one of the things that I have to watch myself sometimes, because I am an intuitive person and I am an emotional person. As much as I'm an instinctual and intellectual person, I'd like to believe that I am finding that alignment for myself, because I think it's different for everyone. Whether the experience of love or the experience of relativity, it's always different for everyone. I mean, I used to watch or read articles or see things about how they were approaching sharing wisdom or insight from a congregational parameter. And what I mean when I say that is, like, say for instance, and I, no disrespect to religion, but in a church setting, you go to a church, everybody hears the same thing from the same person, and in some cases they all interpret it the same way, and that's just not the way it works. We're all very unique individual people, and we all have different genetics, we all have different biorhythms, we all have different makeups, we all have different histories, we all have different experiences. And so therefore, that's what gets to the heart of what you were asking about earlier in regards to what it is that people can do to create that for themselves. They have to do that for themselves, and you can't, there's no, as there's no book, there's no guideline. You can watch movies, you can listen to lectures, you can listen to people talk, you can, do whatever you can to put yourself in a realm, in a domain of understanding. But first and foremost, like you said earlier on our call, it starts from within. Freedom is from within. And we live in a society where everybody is attempting to find it outside of themselves, and they'll never find it. It's like the dangling carrot scenario. It's like a vicious cycle in society where everybody is trying to find what it is that is enlightenment or empowerment or attainment or fulfillment or transformation from without, and it'll never work that way. But that in and of itself, I believe, is a distraction socially as well. And I think that there are people that utilize that to their advantage for the sake of separation, or for the sake of distortion or manipulation of interpretation or perception.
I mean, maybe people looked at it that, no one's separating them from anything. They're separating themselves from themselves. And as a consequence, the world looks the way it does. And it's, no one can give that or take that from you. Right.
I'm glad that you brought that up too, Lorenzo, because it's not just the separation from others, or even like from reality, like how people escape reality through movies or through music, even to some degree, or through fantasies that they may create or invent to, live the life that they think they should be living that they're not. But it's also the separation from self. That's the most dangerous element, in relation to what we're talking about with the subject matter of love. How can you relate with another person if you're separated from yourself? You can't. It's impossible. And most people, most people may be afraid of relating with other people, or even sharing on an emotional level of vulnerability, to have that exchange of fulfillment of relativity. But it first starts with their relatedness with themselves, and finding out who they are. I mean, think about it from this perspective. Most people don't even know who they are. No. Aside from the fact that they're afraid of the world or the reality in which we live now for the last 2 years, they're even terrified of themselves or finding out who they are. Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult thing to some degree with really understanding and intimating ourselves with who we are. So when it comes to the topic of love, knowing yourself, experiencing yourself, being yourself, which is way better than knowing yourself. Being yourself is like the doorway to be able to love, to be able to experience love, let alone on a multi-dimensional level.
So being yourself, figuring out who you are, and what's possible would be, one way to love through challenging times, is to use the challenges on the outside to understand what's going on the inside, and to figure out who you even want to be, I would say, perhaps, would be something.
Yeah, there's no one else in this world, of 7 billion plus people in this world. There's no one else in this world that can be who we are. And so I think in some ways, and I know that this might sound harsh to some people, but in some ways I do truly believe that when you are not yourself, it's a crime against humanity, because of what you're withholding from the human race. You're withholding yourself.
For sure.
For whatever reason. I mean, there could be a lot of different reasons why people withhold who they truly are or who they truly could become. from the world and the difference that that could make. But it is a crime against humanity.
For sure. I did a book with our editor, Lupe, and, there's a line in it where it's about waking up, how unfair to all of the rest to never decide to let out your best, right?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of a direct reflection of what you just said is like, we're all unique. Everyone wants to think they're unique. You look at a snowflake, supposedly they're all different out of the 10 gazillion snowflakes that come all the time. And I would feel if you had a loving creator, which most people say you do, that would allow you to make yourself into anything you wish to make yourself into.
Sure.
Whatever that is for you. Right. So,
but then again, like, when you look at it from a standpoint of what you just mentioned about a loving creator, there is a social psychosis that is centered around that we live or that we believe or that God is a fear-bearing entity, Sure. I mean, it's written in even the Bible that, it's like so automatically when you talk about, or when we talk about the belief, which is central to the core of a person and who they may become, when we look at the belief element in our experience, and if people interpret or perceive or are told or manipulated to or whatever, I mean, that's like sick. I mean, that's like an illness, in some ways. And for me, I've never had, in all of my years of experience of being present to matters of spirit, I've never experienced like a judgmental, vengeful, angry spirit or entity. I've never experienced that before, and I mean, I had to like break down my own interpretations and programming and conditioning that I went through when I was younger, but I never had that experience. And interestingly enough, like as soon as I kind of let go of that interpretation, I realized that that really enhanced my relationships with people. And so I feel very comfortable with a lot of the people in my life and relating with them on a certain level, hopefully as multidimensionally as possible, depending upon, the commitment of the relatedness. But I've never experienced that, even to this day, with many of the people that I'm in relation with.
Well, what would you say to the voice of unreason, I guess, that most people hear in their head? The voice of the, I guess you could call it the archontic movements, the voice of fear, the voice that tells them all the bad things that are coming near in relation to, as you say, maybe their deeper desires to grow towards that multidimensional experience of being a unique, loving being.
Mm-hmm. I would say, first foremost, I would say, shh.
Yeah.
Second of all, I'd say, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can, swear, and maybe this has to be edited later on, but
no, that's perfect.
But I mean, that's like a part of the development on a unique and individual level. Like that's a part of our experience as human beings or spiritual beings in the human experience of being able to find that silence, to quiet that voice, to become more present and observant. Like I just started working on a new article today called Down to Earth, because I write about, a lot of the times I write about, these universal things and multidimensionality and creativity and transformation, like, not heavy things, but like things that require a certain amount of quality of engagement to get to understand, but for me, like being able to acknowledge the first and foremost as human beings, the most powerful thing that we can do is observe. Not engage, because once you engage, you're trapped. You're in it. It's going to be hard to be able to navigate through the engagement that we all have, which is in some ways related to our experience with love. Because a lot of the times we get engaged in love, and if we get engaged in love and it's like a physical thing, then we're locked into that until we get beyond the physical, right? But for me, it's like it's being able to, and I've talked with Alva about this too, and we've talked about how, like, the first and foremost, when we're engaged or experiencing like something intense or difficult, especially like this whole last 2 years, the first thing is to go back within yourself and observe, like on all the different levels that we can. On an instinctual level, how is this impacting me? Is there fear stirring up in me? On an intellectual level, am I being overwhelmed by the thought process that is my reaction to the circumstances that are in my experience? On an emotional level, am I becoming upset or angry or frustrated or hopeless or whatever in light of this issue or this challenge? Or even on an intuitive level, what does this mean? On an intuitive level, what is the deeper understanding of why these things are happening? So for me, it's a very multidimensional experience that helps me to be able to step back inside myself. But I first have to go into an observation mode and just witness and experience it and feel it and sense it and see how it resonates with me on an energetic level.
I mean, it sounds like what I would feel is also a good strategy is to disengage the victim, disengage blame, disengage guilt,
Oh,
and take full responsibility for whatever's going on around you. And from there, you can take full responsibility for changing what you perhaps are not attractive to at the time. Let's say
it requires, just like you said, it requires our own individual responsibility. And as spiritual beings in a human experience, it is our responsibility to be accountable for our experience and for who we are and how we manifest ourselves into reality and with other people in our lives and in our relativity. We have to be accountable. That's integrity. And unfortunately, integrity doesn't exist, as much as we were led to believe that it did years ago, decades ago, or whatever. So for me, it's always about being present and observing and attempting to be in a space of understanding, maybe in a transcendent level beyond the reactionary reality in which we live.
it's a good perspective on loving through challenging times. I mean, integris means to full integrity, right? To have full integrity. And, maybe it's important to see where you have the holes in your creative conscious system that's not letting you grow into the loving experience you may be wishing to grow into.
The greatest teacher I have in regards to love and relatedness is my wife. And it's mostly because as you know, when you live with someone on a daily basis and you see their good side and you see their not so good side and you see their extraordinary side and you see their ordinary side, and you're always experiencing that with another person. There's so many things that are going on in a relationship. It's not just about cohabitating, or it's not just about being intimate once in a while, and it's not just about being able to relate with each other or make things work financially or whatever. I mean, for me, like the experience of being able to learn about love, what that means in all of its capacities and all of its dimensions, I have never learned more so than I have with my wife. I mean, we're into our 20th year of knowing each other and living together. And so being able to have that experience on a daily basis, and sometimes it's rough, like everybody else. And sometimes it's just, extraordinary, and it puts you into a space of awe, of understanding the full potential that we have with love and relatedness and emotional, intuitive, spiritual, intellectual, and instinctual exchanges. But for us, I mean, we both know that it's on a soul level, it's on an intuitive level, and it's on an emotional level, it's on an instinctual level and intellectual level. It's on all those different levels, and they don't always click all the time because we're different people with different experiences, and we have different challenges and personality quirks and all that stuff. But I feel like for within that responsibility you were talking about earlier about love, it is our responsibility, my wife and I, to be able to bring the best of ourselves as much as possible, to have that relativity and that experience and that fulfillment of that love. And like I said earlier, I'm glad that you mentioned the topic of love, because I truly believe that that is the answer. That's always been the answer. You know, it's just that the human race is just so clever for itself that it tries to come up with different ways to bring happiness, you know, technology or entertainment or, you know, financial wealth or whatever. I mean, all those things are just trivial in relation to love.
But you know, as the old saying goes, it takes two to tango. You know, and I've been lucky in that way as well, in that, you know, my partner, my wife, and I have both decided by hook or by crook to consciously grow in love, to consciously grow our lives. You know, I would say a good way to look at it is we're helping each other grow up. You know, even though I'm beyond what they would say is my youth, I still find I'm growing every day. I constantly and consistently learning new bits about myself, and my wife and I have consciously decided to assist each other in that. Uh,
Sure.
you know, so
Yeah. I've learned I've learned how to be vulnerable, and I've learned how to be expressive, and I've learned how to, I mean, I think back, like, I mean, and I know that you can resonate with this too, Lorenzo, like when we were younger and we were trying to prove something, you know, to the significant other or whatever, we were trying to get the girl, you know, acting like not who we are now, you know. um, and over time, if we allow ourselves as human beings to be vulnerable enough to relate on that level, on an emotional level, to connect with somebody very powerfully, on many different levels, on multidimensionally, it really is an extraordinary experience. And once you have that experience, and it only takes like one experience, I think, of having that insightful empowerment that comes from that type of alignment, when two people are aligned together in such a way that they can experience each other on such a powerful and profound level, that that in many cases I've felt really empowers us to do the work that we need to do on a personal level, to have that and sustain that as much as possible, you know. So for me, like I was saying earlier, love is the answer. Love is the practice of being present with another person or with other people and becoming a manifestation of the universe.
and yeah, I mean, you mentioned my youth and some of the folly that's come between now and then, and I could, you know, I'm looking back with huge smiles and internal laughter on all my failures, right? I'm going, oh my goodness, you know, at the time what seemed like a catastrophe, you know, I look back now and going, oh my goodness, thank God that relationship failed, or that job failed, or this friendship failed, or, you know, like you said, you know, you tripped and fell on your face when you were chasing that girl, or that whatever, you know, that sexual experience, and you know, at the time you're going, damn, too bad, but now you're going, oh my goodness, you know, if I am here today and doing what I'm doing only because of my failures, you know, your successes as well, of course, but I guess that could go back to what you talked about earlier about the humility in accepting, you know, and even I would say, you know, I don't want to say deifying, but you know, bringing your failures up to where they belong as huge teaching tools for your current successes.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, we can't really have successes without failure. Um, and going through that process of understanding where that success comes from and how it is empowered by failure. And it's funny because, like, when I reflect back on who I used to be when I was younger, and the women that I used to be with, part of me, like, and this has actually happened before in the past, a part of me wants to call him up and say, I apologize.
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell I was being at that time. You know, that's just, that wasn't me. That's not who I am, you know. But it's just so weird how personality and fear and trying to prove something gets in the way of our ability of being able to experience love on a very deep level.
I mean, maybe people, you know, we mentioned, you know, love through challenging times is the topic of this video. It seems, as you've said, and people have seen over the last couple of years, there's been nothing but failure on the outside world, you know, failure of jobs, failure of communication, failure of countries, failure of laws, failure of rules, failure of food supplies, they say, failure of this, that, and the other thing. And, perhaps they're looking for the ultimate successes through these failures, from, I would say, why everyone's asked for this particular experience on the planet at the time. I'm taking full responsibility for everything that's going on. I'm going, this is, people may get upset, but I think it's groovy. That I think people have asked for all this garbage and all this nonsense and all these monsters chasing them around with masks and syringes so that they could, they can learn how to stand up and be men. If you say, since there's two men talking here, by being humble enough to accept their failures, inside, outside, and worldly.
And that's a good example. I'm glad that you bring that up in relation to how things are currently in the world. I mean, from kind of what we were talking about before we started this interview, when you look at the way that things are trying to be imposed or influenced in the world, whether it's like, the whole thing with the masking, or the whole thing with the restrictions, or the whole thing with vaccinations, or all of that stuff, none of that is love. And that's the thing. And I think it becomes very dangerous as a society when we get into a space of believing that our judgment of other people that don't follow our train of thought or understanding or belief should be following our path. I mean, believe it or not, it's not like it's ever happened before. It's happened a million times in the history of humanity that people are trying to impose other people to believe or live the way they do, but it's really stunning to me in many ways, looking at how people are interacting, and that divisiveness that's ever persistent through the history of humanity and society, whether it's politics or virus or whatever, even sports or whatever. But it certainly isn't an expression of love, where we have attempted to manipulate and distort things to an extent to placate our own fear of maybe what other people that we don't agree with believe in might be true. And that's a scary thing for a lot of people. A lot of, say for instance, like somebody that is a vaccinated person that believes everybody should be vaccinated, and that's the answer to all the problems in the world right now, because obviously it's been collapsed into the virus. This is the biggest problem. Never mind there's war going on, never mind there's corporate greed going on, never mind there's manipulation of people on a social level, never mind there's enslavement in the world, never mind that people are being treated with inequality or injustice. This is the main problem. So the example I have in regards to that is that, goes back to what we were talking about with acceptance, right? And I've gone through this personally with my own family, when it comes to my perspectives on how things are going on. And I've caught, in certain circumstances, them attempting to influence me into a certain direction in regards to perception of the vaccination or the virus or whatever. And what's really interesting to me, almost to the extent of fascination, is how you can be related with somebody biologically for your whole life. Okay. And there's a certain relativity that you're able to generate with them. And it's very solid, and they will die for you. You'll die for them. You'll do whatever you need to do to be able to maintain that relativity. And then along comes a virus, right? And it spins everybody out. And it spins them out to the point where their belief system around a vaccine is greater than their love for the person. And that's startling to me, that they're willing to abandon the love that they have for their person, for their relative, for their even significant other, whatever. Not saying that it has anything to do with my wife, because my wife is very diverse and open-minded about many different things. But it always amazes to me how people are so willing to abandon love. And that goes to the topic that we're talking about, how easy it is for people to abandon love when a hot topic like this of controversial nature comes up, and automatically people are inverted or turned upside down and they totally forget about love. They totally abandon it because they're so focused on trying to push an agenda that by all means is not even theirs to begin with.
I know.
You know, if you ask them what they thought about vaccinations before all this stuff started, they probably wouldn't be on the same page they are on now. And that's like very interesting to me to see how the course of events occur and how it changes and turns people. You know, it spins them out, and and ultimately it spins them away from the love. You know, and the first cornerstone that I acknowledge personally as being a pathway to love is acceptance. And if you can't accept the person because of their diversity of thought or perspective or belief, then it isn't just that you can't love that person, you can't love other people.
Or yourself.
Or yourself, exactly. And so it all is connected in many different ways. I mean, that's the nature of relativity. That's the multidimensionality of relativity I was talking about earlier, is all the relatedness that we have with all these different people or experiences or nature or the universe or society or whatever. I mean, and it's very interesting to me too how much of a lack of awareness there is for a lot of people of how much that takes them away from that love, how much they're willing to sacrifice their love to be right. That's what it's all about, in my opinion. That's the problem of humanity, is they're willing to abandon love to be right. And the question I would ask for people that were doing that, how's that working for you?
Yeah. I mean, what is right? And like you said, where are they even getting the right and wrong from? You know,
Sure.
who's
And that's the thing, it's the bipolar paradigm in which we live, you know, whether it's dark and light, right and left, up and down, blah, 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 whatever. I mean, that's the duality in which we exist, where even the right and wrong is a fabrication, it's an illusion. But people are so engaged. There's something about self-righteousness that really catches people like they're enslaved. You know, maybe it's their enslavement to their own ego, or maybe it's their enslavement to society or whatever. But it's interesting to see in the course of my life experience up to this point, it's interesting to see how many people trip up with being right and being self-righteous about something. But I mean, that's where the whole vaccination thing comes from. That's where the whole interpretation of the virus comes from, or that's, you know, politics, religion, all that stuff. It's all about being right. It's not about believing. It's not about loving. You know, it's not about being aware or conscious or socially correct. It's all about being right.
Or healthy.
Society that's always seeking to be right. You know, like it's some sort of a spiritual attainment.
I guess if people are coming to watch this video through the title, you know, loving through challenging times, maybe, you know, rule number one would be to see where you're not being loving, you know, to see where you've given up.
Absolutely.
To see where you've given up your love for, as you said, being right or health or whatever reason. I would think there's no reason that's good enough to give up your love. That would be my opinion.
No, not at all. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It all starts from within. So if you're surprised about how you don't have love and relatedness in your experience with other people or with society, or even your experience of life in general, it's probably because you don't love yourself.
I don't know what's going on. You know, I've heard that so many times. Yeah.
And jumping on bandwagons. And that's great. I mean, people can choose to do that. They're free to do that, whatever. But I mean, ultimately, the reality is, the harsh reality for those people that choose to do that is that they are abandoning their love. And instead of claiming it, or instead of generating it, or instead of expressing it, or instead of becoming it,
or living in it, you know, like you say, it's
exactly.
Well, I think that almost takes us full circle to how to.
Yeah, I didn't mean to get too intense about it, but
no.
Just, I don't know, I think there's some
things
that are coming up from, there are some things that are coming up for me personally, Lorenzo, about my experience of what I've observed, like I was saying earlier, and how the observation has brought a lot of clarity for me. I mean, even for family members, people that are close to me. I mean, like when everything shut down, even to this day, I have friends that are like locked in their houses. I'm like, what are you doing? This is not what life is. I mean, it's go outside, be in nature, whatever. Don't lock yourself away because you're waiting for something to pass so that you're not going to get sick. But no, I mean, I think that for me, I guess I'm impassioned by uh, all of our opportunities for love that we do have,
Mm.
and the difference that our love can make. And especially, like you said earlier, in challenging times. I mean, if you're not loving in challenging times, good luck.
Yeah. And all of it. I mean, it's all a challenge, right? From the time you're born, probably till you're taking your last breath. It seems to me every day, open my eyes, it's a challenge, and
Sure.
it's how you meet that challenge. I could talk about being a real hero. If you want to be a hero of your own love, how you meet those challenges is what can allow your love to grow, or, the opposite to take root.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about this. And I mean, personally, for me, Lorenzo, it's brought out a lot of clarity and insight and understanding. And, I guess it has made me present to some of the experience I've had through these last 2 years and how it has, obviously impassioned me based on this interview.
I've never
Oh,
I've never felt more loving in my life than I have over these last couple of years, to be honest. I've never felt more clear.
absolutely.
I've never felt stronger, and I've never felt more full of my own integrity. We'll say, I can say that for myself because I'm talking about myself here, and the ability that I'm getting to connect with people like you and other people, in this crazy world plane, wherever you happen to be. And it's allowing that love to grow, through these challenging times. So, I'm finding for me, it's just by being honest and letting the cards fly where they may, or the chips fall where they do, or whatever that saying says when it comes to love. Throw caution to the wind and see where
Oh,
you.
absolutely. And you kind of have to do that though. When it comes to a situation or an opportunity to be able to express your love, you do have to throw caution to the wind. You do have to put yourself out there. You do have to be willing to be vulnerable. I mean, think of all the relationships in this world, love relationships in this world, whether it's friendship or whether it's significant other, wife, husband, whatever. Think of all the relationships in this world where people don't authentically share or express themselves on an emotional level that helps them to be able to reach an understanding and acceptance of the person that they're living.
It's crazy.
I mean, it blows my mind that people are married for money. It blows my mind that people are married for convenience. Or it blows my mind that people are married because they don't want to be alone, or because they don't want to be chastised by their friends or social circles. Wow, that guy's got a problem because he's not with somebody.
But,
It's just funny
but
how these things dictate our experience.
they like someone's nose, or the cut of their
Sure.
knees, or I mean, eventually everything changes, and what pleased you one day doesn't please you the next. But when you root yourself in your own love, that never changes. I found it only grows if you keep nurturing it, and allowing that. I mean, this has been great. I love chatting with you. I appreciate your time here with this. For anybody that may have any questions for Iam or myself, please leave a comment below. I will leave our email. I will leave a link to Iam's latest article he mentioned. And of course, we'll share his new one, Down to Earth, as he creates it and feels like exposing it to the world, so to speak. I will leave a link to his music as well. And for anyone interested in any personal services, I am working with a few already. I do have In Love Unlimited, and sharing my heart to your heart, and maybe that'll help. And it's helped me, that's for sure, being able to share honestly with fellows like I am in this world.
Good one. I appreciate that, Lorenzo. And yeah, for me personally, it really did bring a lot of clarity speaking with you about this topic. And you kind of, I wasn't expecting to talk about love in challenging times, but it was a very good choice for the experience.
I appreciate it. Well, that's where we are. We're in challenging times. I'm working In Love Unlimited. I figure put them together. Maybe be smiling as much as I do, and Iam seems to every time I talk with him as well. And I think we're both showing that you can be loving, you can be strong, you can be vulnerable, you can be humble, and you can be successful. through whatever is going on inside, outside, and around your life at any time. If that's the message I want to leave people with, that would be it. Be strong because love is great.
Good one.
All right, Iam, thanks again. I love you all very much. Thanks for joining us. I'm gonna, be talking with Iam again soon. So like, subscribe, comment below, follow, come on our Telegram, come on our email, however you feel like coming back again. We'd love to see you again soon.